So let's get into this. Let's start with the Detroit Lions, our preview for the 2023 Detroit Lions. Man, what a difference a couple years make. Speaking of this show and the way we've talked about teams on this show, remember at the end of the 2021 season, we were watching a couple Lions games and just talking about how enjoyable it was to watch this 3-win team, how hard they were playing, how clearly bought in a lot of the young players were. They just had the feeling of a team that was headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
A year and a half later, a little less than 2 years later, this team is plus 135 to win the NFC North. They are the favorites in the division. They are playing the Chiefs in a nationally televised game against the defending champs to open the season, and no one's even blinking. This is the dream. They've pulled off this rebuild that has made them both immediately relevant, but beyond that, genuinely exciting. When your team is tearing it down and trying to build it back up, the Lions' process over the last 2 years in terms of what their expectations were and what they are now, this is exactly what you want at the end of that road.
Man, even with the hire originally, and it was just kind of a quirk of the hiring cycle of that season. And I remember we kind of talked about him. We're like, thank you. We'll keep an eye on him. At least he's interesting. At least he's unique. At least he brings something different than what we see. He's not another, no offense to the guys, because I know a few of them, but the Shanahan tree guys that all look like guys I took, business classes with at Wisconsin. And so it's just these like that. It was just a breath of fresh air in a different ways. And who knew how it was going to go? The Lions kind of could go in so many different directions. It's the Lions. My dad was undefeated against the Lions. He had one true winning season in 4 years. Like that's kind of like how I remember the Lions from those days, the early 2000s. But it's just the good feelings with this team, kind of an identity, like a lot of just tough players, smart players, and balanced players, especially on offense, I would say. And then we'll talk about the defense in a minute, but they're trying to get that identity on defense as well, though. And you can at least when they sign guys, like even when you look at receivers they've signed over the last couple of years for undrafted free agents, every single time I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Because they're all just a certain body type. Like they're just a certain mindset of how they play. A lot of big bodied, dirty work guys. And then even their star receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we'll talk about plenty, I'm sure. He kind of epitomizes that. He's like a super efficient, super dirty work, does all the little things types of guy, and he's really good at it. And that's kind of cool that their star skill player is that, and that's the Lions, and that's the identity this team takes, where all the positions are like that. So just a fun team to talk about because of that, because they have that type of identity that they've built this last couple of years.
This isn't we'll talk about the offense here first. This is not a group that it's not a good story. It's not a feel-good story from last season. They were truly elite. They were truly one of the best offenses in the league. It wasn't an overperforming offense. There was no caveat or qualifier that you would have to attach to their offense last year. Well, there's some, which we can get into. But there's no like, for this reason, like for this kind of team, they were pretty good on offense. They were truly one of the best offenses in football last year. A top 5 offense by virtually any metric that you can judge this stuff by. So as we head into 2023, what is the biggest question that you have about the Detroit Lions offense?
All those things, like the underlying metrics, are all great. Like they show some sustainability, especially on first and second down. But how does this offense generate explosive plays? That will put you over the top. That's what I'm keeping an eye on. Run game and pass game. Because as much as I even like this run game, and I'll get into it in a sec, that it wasn't explosive whatsoever. Following their bye week, that's what's big thing also about this Lions team. This is a great post-bye week team to look at, just as far as all the splits with everything. But they were 20th worst in explosive play rate, explosive pass rate, and explosive rush rate. So they were not an explosive team. And if you look at their skill players, it kind of makes a lot of sense. And look at their quarterback, Jared Goff. Goff does, even since Cal, does his dirty work over the middle in the intermediate areas. That's what he does. He doesn't put pushing the ball. We'll just say that. But also their pass catchers, if you just look at this is what they're trying to add. This is what the Jameson Williams draft pick was supposed to be, who was suspended for the first 6 weeks. But this is also what Jahmyr Gibbs is supposed to bring, not just in the pass game, but also as a runner. He's explosive as a runner. That is what he is best at. I compared him to Felix Jones. You remember old Cowboys?
He actually is a very good physical comp to Felix Jones. If you look on Mock Draftable and you look at just size and traits heading into the draft from the combine, Felix Jones is one of his best comp points. So there's a couple other guys I want to talk about with Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit later when we discuss him. It was interesting discussions that I had in Detroit. But the point you're making about the explosiveness to me feels right on. Mine was, do they have enough firepower to remain elite in 2023?
Yes.
When you have these sorts of offenses that are elite without the offenses are elite for like 3 different reasons, in my opinion. You have an elite quarterback, which typically helps. You have elite supporting cast, elite all the way across the board, and you have an elite play caller. Typically, I think you need 2 of those 3 things. And the version with the last 2 is harder. The Niners have done it multiple years in a row. That's more difficult to me than having an elite quarterback and elite play caller like the Chiefs do. So the question with the Lions, because Jared Goff is not an elite quarterback, even if he's played pretty well for them, I think Ben Johnson has earned the benefit of the doubt as an elite play caller. Do they have an elite supporting cast? Do they actually have an elite supporting cast when you look at it top to bottom, those other 10, 11, 12 guys? The offensive line is good. It has some really nice pieces. They could be even better this year with maybe a little less rotation at one of those guard spots. Vaitai is back, but they got 17 games from both of their tackles. So is the offensive line maybe the group that you can really rely on? Are the pass catchers the group you can really rely on? Jamison Williams is suspended for the first 6 games of the year. Jahmyr Gibbs, like you're talking about, is a rookie coming in here. Sam Laporta is potentially like a really important part of what they're doing on offense. He's a rookie tight end. It is really hard to be a rookie tight end and produce in the NFL. So are we taking away or chipping away at some of the things that would make this an elite supporting cast and potentially keep them in that group as one of the 5, 7 best offenses in football? I think that is the central most important question.
And that's, I mean, even our top 10 offenses pod, which everyone should listen to. It's a lot of fun. But also in that pod, that's why I kind of kept them out. I my 10B was my caveat. But 11. But why I kind of kept on with these hesitations was there's other teams that we say it's like, oh, this rookie, this guy's going to step and fill right in, and this guy's going to do this. Oh, it's a second round rookie, he's going to help out there. I think that saying that these 2 rookies, a pass catching running back that's sub 200, by the way, which is always the thing that you have to keep an eye on with running backs. And Sam Laporta, as you mentioned, the tight end, who is a receiving only tight end. He tries blocking, but he's problem in college. It's going to be an issue in the NFL as well.
And he's their 11 personnel tight end. He's just going to start for them.
He's playing 40 plus snaps a game. Yeah.
That is so much that you're asking of these guys. We have 2 of them in the NFC North. These like 245-pound guys, they're going to be starters in 11 personnel. Asking that guy to do all of the blocking that you're asking him to do, plus be a receiver, their heads are going to be spinning. Even if you are enthusiastic about Luke Musgrave and Laporta, it is going to be a process with both of these guys.
Yeah, it's teams, and there's another tight end we'll talk about on a different team about there's benefits to letting these guys develop and then plucking them and getting them, letting someone else do the work and get them after year 4. There we go. And then it's like much easier, but that's what it is. I like Laporta. My joke was that he was everybody's second favorite tight end, because everybody had a guy and then he was the other guy. Everyone goes, have you seen Sam Laporta? And then
I loved him, man. When we were watching him, I was like, I don't know, man. This guy seems as good as the other guys.
Yeah, and he tested great, and he's like tough as hell. Like he's playing injured, doing all this stuff. Great teammate. And then he ended up being the second tight end drafted, which was kind of funny. But also, so that's the pass catchers and also the juice of the pass catchers. Because again, Jamison Williams suspended for the first third of the season. Khalif Raymond's a nice auxiliary piece. They have Josh Reynolds, but after that, it's kind of, you have to squint, like, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is more of a Chris Godwin type than a vertical guy. So it's, where are you creating those explosive plays in the pass game unless they're designed shots? It's not really a flowy, explosive pass game as well. So that's where we're kind of limited here.
9.7% explosive play rate down the second half of last season when they were one of the best 5 offenses in the league. That ranks 24th among all the offenses in the league. They grinded out first downs. They're very good at it.
It's great.
This team got 20 first downs on 4th down last season, which was the 3rd highest rated, which is the 3rd highest number in the NFL.
It's like a positive because you're like, hell yeah, going for it. Dan Campbell, way to go. And then a negative because
it's a tough way to live.
Yeah.
It's a tough way to live.
Yes.
So I think that they need to be if they're going to live in the same world where they're not going to be able to be that explosive, especially without Jamison Williams early on, or if Jamison Williams doesn't come on. It's not as if Jamison Williams has been some gangbuster performer in training camp.
One catch on 9 targets last year. Him and Penei Sewell finished with the same amount of receptions last year.
That's so if that's going to be a concern even when he is playing.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have that explosive element. We likely frame it as a role player,
Nice.
but if that's going to be the most explosive receiver you have in your receiving core, it's just a tough way to live. So you need to be ultra efficient on the ground. And this team wasn't that good running the football last year. They were 18th in early down rushing success rate. Yep. You hope that with one season under their belts, and again, a little bit more continuity in the interior of the offensive line, that can be better this year. I asked Ben Johnson about this because I was really curious. They run so much stuff. They have the most varied run game in the NFL.
Yes, they do. I got some stats once you're done talking about it.
So lay those out right now, because I think that they're going to be useful in this conversation.
I looked this up on SIS. They're the only offense with 40+ carries and 4 different run concepts or run schemes. The only one. And the outside the main outside of a draw, all the other main run schemes, I won't list them off, but just all of them outside of one, they had double-digit reps in, which sounds kind of like, 10+ plays. That's ridiculous that's like having a pitcher that can throw 8 pitches at you. And here's
the question. Can all 8 pitches be good?
Jack of all trades or master of none.
That is the problem. And I think that they looked at the offensive line that they have and the athleticism specifically. All these guys are great pullers. They're good on the move. And your gears just start grinding as a coach. Like, we can do this and we can do that and we can do this. And so what they do every week is they pick 20 runs that are in the game plan. And they start to hone in on those every single week. But they're plucking from such a wide menu that I wonder if the menu is too wide. And we can talk about some of the drawbacks and benefits of this. Having such a varied run game and a complementary play action game where there's always something tied to the runs, it makes you very hard to defend. But I think it does probably have an impact on how consistently effective those base runs in their offense are.
And this is where talent in the O-line game can help, and this is why they can get away with Penei Sewell can just do anything. They have him pull and do all these things. But just what you're speaking to, I also noticed that had an effect on the running backs is that that's why zone teams are zone teams, is because the running back gets a feel for the blocks as well. Oh, I know my left guard and center double team this way, so I know just to lean a little bit and then cut back on it. It's a feel thing. And so it affects the running backs too. And especially when you have a running back like DeAndre Swift, who's explosive, but his vision it's bad. I would say not even below average. It's bad.
So maybe that's an argument for why it could potentially be better as well. Because Swift is, while he's gifted athletically, there are nuances to his game that I think they were frustrated with last year. So can David Montgomery give you a little bit more pop while being maybe a little bit more of a nuanced runner than the guys they had last season? So there are reasons on both sides of this stuff, but in the aggregate, I think that there is reason to be not concerned, because I have a lot of faith in the people running this offense, but reason to have some kernels of doubt about where that explosiveness is going to come from if they're not ultra efficient. It's just harder to live that way. And they did it once, but doing it again, even if you have a lot of faith and a lot of respect for the people pulling the levers, calling the plays, it just can be a little bit more difficult.
And just before anyone kind of goes, well, you guys are really complimentary about the Bengals for doing this type of offense. The thing with the Bengals is I know what their upside is. I know that at any time they can just go, we have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
They still had explosive plays last year. But they just didn't live off of them.
They didn't live off of it. And so I'm just kind of going why you need to be able to live in both worlds, because there's defenses and other teams that are going to take one away once it comes down to it. So not all of a sudden when you face a defense that can just kick your ass up front and just squeezes everything down low. Just look at what the Bucs offense looked like last year. That's the ultimate downside, but I'm just saying that's what it feels like. It's a huge question mark for this team that they have to answer at some point this season.
Then the thing you said about being lucky or unlucky, they only turned the ball over 15 times last year. That was the fewest in the NFL. That's not happening again. Even if you have a conservative ball control offense, you're not turning the ball over 15 times this year. So there are going to be some bounces of the ball that maybe don't go their way, and then that becomes more difficult to be hyper efficient. So the dials are going to have to be a little bit different this year. How they arrive there, we'll see. But I think that in order to be a top 5 offense again, they are going to have to be a little bit more explosive and have a little bit more firepower. The question becomes, do they have those guys on the roster when it all is said and done?
Yep.
Biggest question about the Detroit Lions defense in your mind?
It's kind of a two-parter that doesn't really narrow it down. I said, can the pass rush continue to get better, and can they cover anyone? That's really what it comes
Those
down
seem like
to.
two important questions,
right? That's why I laughed even reading my what I wrote down. I was like, way to go, Nate. Way to really just narrow this down. This is why everyone listens to us. This is but when I watching
everyone
this
might be strong.
everyone,
A few thousand.
My mom.
Nerds.
Hi, mom. But honestly, it's when you watch this defense, the pass rush, I think I liked more upon rewatch and feel as I kind of really looked at it. And maybe
they were third in pressure rate in the second half of last season. Third.
Yeah, they're top 10 with only 4 pass rushers as well, which is a good underlying number to look at when a team, how they look when they don't blitz. James Houston coming out of us nowhere kind of really helps when your day 3 pass rusher all of a sudden just becomes like goes supernova for 6 weeks. But coverage wise, they run a defense that acts like they have dudes. And I'm very curious if they have any semblance of dudes.
Why do you say that? Just the amount of man coverage that they run?
A lot of man coverage, decent amount of blitzing. But even it's not toned down. It looked nothing different this preseason. They were almost 2/3 man coverage this preseason.
Wow.
Almost 2/3. And I just watched one game, one of their preseason games. And I think they were man the entire, I think I watched the first half. They were man in every snap that I watched.
Second half of last season, it was 53% man coverage on third down, which was the highest rate in the NFL during the second half of the year.
And what gets me is certain this team was not good on defense. First off, I also want to say that last year, although they improved in the second half, it still was like, below aaverage. And they
went from, I think, the 30th best defense in the league to like the 23rd best defense.
And I remember it was notable. I think I brought it up on the pod.
It was notable because when you have a really, really good offense, being at least 23rd made them a potential playoff team in the NFC.
Correct. You just want elite in one unit and tolerable in the other unit. But it's like they gave up 107 explosive plays last year. The league average was 75. Like they're dead last in explosive play rate and explosive pass rate following the bye week last week. It's just not sustainable. And so that's where they want to have these ambitions. They need to get better. And yes, they brought in reinforcements though. That's what you have to say. They added Cam Sutton, solid. Mosley is on PUP already. But the other pieces that they add, and Brian Branch and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I am interested to see how those guys play out and how they use them, because I think they need explosive plays for their defense. They're low in TFL rate, low in, okay in sacks, but they need big plays for the defense, create turnovers. But how they're living right now, it's going to be tough, being in that man coverage world.
Have they done enough? That's my question, because you're right. They have some reinforcements, but this was a bad defense last year.
Yeah.
So you go get CJ Gardner-Johnson, you go get Emmanuel Mosley, you go get Cam Sutton, and you go get Brian Branch. Like, okay, we have remade our secondary. What is that going to look like? And the answer right now is that Brian Branch is in the slot where they had some options based on who they had signed. CJ Gardner-Johnson and Kirby Joseph, who was a third-round pick last year and played very well for a third-round rookie in that defense. That's your safety spot. You feel good about it.
You do.
At corner, Cam Sutton is a very solid player. He got a worthwhile contract in free agency to be one of their outside corners. And like you said, Emmanuel Mosley's on PUP. So now it's Jerry Jacobs again there at the outside corner spot, who I like as Jerry Jacobs is a fun player on a bad team. But in the aggregate, it's not like they added all this star power to the secondary. Hopefully they will be better, but how much better? And then you look at the front seven, they didn't do anything.
Nothing.
They drafted Jack Campbell in the first round. Right now, Chris Barnes is slated to be a day one starter next to Alex Anzalone at linebacker. I think that says more about the offseason Chris Barnes had than about Jack Campbell, but they're relying on the same group up front, the same group. Romeo Okwara is healthy again, so he only played a few games last year, so maybe that's one area where you can get a little bit more. But this is going to be Aiden Hutchinson, who I think is an ascending star. I think he is a very, very good player. But other than that, it's a lot of role player type guys. Yeah. John Kaminsky and Josh Pascal, who are like 275, 280 pound tweeners in their defense. James Houston, like you mentioned, is kind of just a pure situational pass rusher.
Who still looks good. He had a good preseason, don't get me wrong, but he's
Charles Harris,
a super role player.
Yes. And they got Charles Harris as their other edge guy. And he's somebody that, was available for next to nothing a couple of years ago. They've done this where they've kind of picked guys off the scrap heap and gotten more out of them, but more out of them is all relative. Yeah. So you look at the pieces up front and you think, is this the type of group that can affect offenses at a playoff contender-like level? And I just don't know the answer to that yet. Maybe Aiden Hutchinson is so good that everything else kind of gets lifted around them. And Kaminsky's an underrated player, and we'll see what happens with Pascal in year 2, all that kind of stuff. But have they done enough is my central question. And I just don't know. And we're not going to know until we get into the season and see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's it. Is just, have they done enough? Because they're not changing what they did. That I think is the underlying thing. It's not like this defense. I was like, oh wow, they spent this whole offseason using the pieces in different ways. It's like, there it is. There's man coverage. And why it's, I think why I think I was about to say this was, I think what was a little, I don't want to say concerning, but it did raise an alarm bell a little bit for me, was in the preseason game against the Jags. This is what was a little concerning to me. It was certain runs we're getting after this Lions defense that were the same runs that we're getting after the Lions defense last year. And
the run defense is exactly what I was thinking about. They were 27th in run defense success rate. They didn't add any pieces to the front seven.
And they played exactly the same. It wasn't a front change or anything. So it was, it's man coverage and certain looks because the safety's locked on the tight end, yada, yada, yada. But the Jags got after him the same plays that were getting after him at the end of last year. And so that's like, oh, that's not what I want to see. Like, I wanted to see maybe like, oh, they get into this, like they have a check or something changed. But I will say positives though. I'm high on Brian Branch. I really like him. And I think he's going to be a really fun player. And there's certain aspects that I'll get into about him on a different answer. But is that he is a guy that I am excited to see. So they have interesting guys, but it's just the whole picture is the sum of their parts is kind of just not really overwhelming me.
The ceiling on defense and where that lands, I think, is an important question, because is the ceiling on offense as high as it was last year? Can they get to that point? So if the ceiling on defense is average and the offense settled somewhere in the back half of the top 10, you're a fine football team. You might win the NFC North, but breaking through against the real teams in the NFC, can you do that with a team that has that construction? I think that becomes the question.
And that's a frustrating thing. Once you realize there's another ceiling you have to break through and go,
that's how it is.
No, that's how it is.
And I think that's an important consideration with this team. Where the public is trying to push them through that ceiling, but maybe they're at a place where they don't even think they're ready for that ceiling.
Right.
Are we getting ahead of ourselves? As a general football watching body and a football loving body about the Detroit Lions this season, I think is the central question.
Yeah.
That's what it comes back to. Are we getting are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves?
I think I've been throttling the brakes or pumping the brakes a little bit for the last couple months, just because I was excited. I was excited about how they ended last season, but it's just, you got to be realistic. And I think that's what it is. I'm trying to throw cold water on myself, because I think as the public, people are very excited to kind of anoint the next thing. And they look like one of the next things for a lot of people.
X factor for the Detroit Lions. What do you got for me?
I had a couple. I went going with the pass catchers, just everybody outside Amon-Ra St. Brown, whether it's the other receivers, it's the rookie running back, the rookie quarterback's like 30, rookie F only tight end, Sam Laporta, but it's those guys have to hit the ground running. But the one stat I came across, because I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a central component. I mean, they're making him sound like Marshall Faulk. A central component of this passing attack is, okay, since 2002, 5 rookie running backs have had 90 or more targets. Okay. Saquon Barkley, Reggie Bush, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Najee Harris. Now, the Najee Harris one is kind of a real outlier if you watch that Steelers offense. But the other guys, those guys were dudes to get 90 or more targets. That's how much they're relying on Gibbs, is maybe what I'm trying to make this out to be. And so that's what those guys have to step up, and we'll see.
At Jameson Williams, talking about that idea, where your explosive is going to come from. How are you going to beat teams over the top down the field, and even just the speed element within the offense, because you don't have it outside of Khalif Raymond if Jameson Williams is not going to be a consistent contributor for you. So what is he within this offense, and how hot, what is his ceiling? Like, what kind of player is he in actuality? Is he just going to be like a field stretcher who doesn't really do much for you elsewhere? You spent a top 12 pick on the guy. That's not the only thing that he is supposed to be. Yes. And you traded 2 picks to go get it. So I think that that's easily mine. Who is your breakout candidate for the 2023 Lions?
I hinted at this, but it's Brian Branch. All these rookie running back, rookie tight end. I'm going with a rookie slot player. I think he's so smart. He's so versatile. I think he'll come in right away and be not only a contributor, but a plus player. I don't know what his upside is, but I do think this guy can be just instantly a contributor right away. I also just wanted to say is that, this team blitzed a lot last year. So he's a good blitzer. He was awesome. He was a weapon for Alabama. So using him as a blitzer, CJ Gardner-Johnson's in the back. He comes down. He's comfortable playing in the slot. That's one thing when I'm talking about where they have to throw new pitches. And I think that is one right there that I could just picture. And I think it's a plus play for them right away.
I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the target number. DeAndre Swift got 70 targets in 14 games last season. Okay. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get 100 targets in this offense. I truly believe he's going to get 100 targets in this offense.
I think they do.
DeAndre Swift is a really good athlete. They did not love him as like a choice route runner last year. His instincts just aren't very good. So while he caught a lot of passes and was a high volume target within the offense, it wasn't within the rhythm of the passing game in the way that you probably want that sort of high volume back to be. Jahmyr Gibbs has that. Jahmyr Gibbs is a very comfortable choice route runner, just a guy that you can use in a bunch of different ways they couldn't with DeAndre Swift last year. That's what I was told when I was up there, at least. So Christian McCaffrey led all running backs with 20 targets of 5+ air yards last season.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be surprised if Jahmyr Gibbs topped that number this year, if he got more than those 20 targets of 5+ air yards. Kamara got 39 over a 2-year stretch with the Saints. And that is the role that they're imagining for him. Dan Campbell was in New Orleans when Alvin Kamara was there. So when they've conceived of this role for Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that is what they've had in mind for him as a receiver specifically. The other name that was mentioned to me was Jamal Charles.
Okay.
John Dorsey was in Kansas City.
Some high names that they're throwing out here right now.
But Jamal Charles,
for my running back 3 in this last class.
Jamal Charles is a sub 200-pound back. Yeah. Jamal Charles was about 5'11", 199. Jahmyr Gibbs is like 5'10 and a half, 199. So if you're trying to find the right comparison as a guy who can affect the running game, but is a little bit undersized, that'd be the guy that you would go to. And we talk about all those runs they ran last year. If you're a gap team, zone runs become your changeup. And they just didn't have that guy who could really kind of hit those runs as a zone runner last year. They're hoping he can be that. So they're going to really rely on him for that explosive element, because without Jameson Williams especially, he immediately becomes the most explosive option within their offense, or hopefully the most explosive option within their offense. So this is me just kind of talking myself into this solely for the Lions' sake, that he'll be their breakout player, because they need him to be.
He ran so many choice routes at college. Like that's all Bill O'Brien did. Like that was like their money third down play. So it's just a lot. it's just I like Gibbs too, and that's the thing. I sound like I'm down on him. He is explosive, and he is a good route runner. He's got good hands and everything. It's just a lot.
They put themselves in this position.
Yeah,
they drafted him with the 12th overall pick and didn't do anything else with their pass catching spots outside of Laporta. Like they've put themselves in this spot. They put themselves in this spot. Whew. Yeah, what a success for the 2023 Lions.
I mean, the guy make the playoffs. And I actually just said make the playoffs. I didn't even say win the division, but I do think win the division as well. But they haven't made the playoffs since what, 2016? And I think that's a huge, huge, huge success for them and a huge goal for them. Because like you said, there's public anointment and public talk about them. But I think privately, that's a good goal for them as well.
I have winning the NFC North. If you can't win it this year, this is it. They are heavy favorites. This is it. This is the shot to anoint, to kind of prove yourself as the team in this division. And I think that would be success.